Well, well, well. Look who's back. Sorry for my long absence. I was a little tied up. It is so good to be back. So the movie or movies that are making the most noise these days are the Fear Street movies. Let's see if they live up to the hype or people are just overly excited about some Netflix horror movies that aren't straight up red box quality pieces of shit. I'll start off with the plot breakdown along with some reactions, but avoiding major spoilers for all three, and then I'll get into major spoilers. So let's turn on the TV and get scared. 1994 starts off with a teen bookstore clerk closing up shop at the local mall and is going to head out with her friend who works there too. As she closes up, a man in a skeleton costume chases her with a knife. She stumbles across a dead mall employee, letting us and her know that this guy isn't messing around. Scream ripoff guy tackles her and she pulls off the mask, revealing it was her friend all along. He stabs her to death and gets gunned down by Officer Good. This is a really solid intro, and not a major spoiler because those characters didn't matter to the main story, so we thank you for dying for our entertainment. The news covering the mall killings state that there were 8 people that died that night. Wait, what the hell? We only saw 2, or 3 if you count the killer. Who thought it was a good idea to show 3 deaths and then afterwards be like, oh, don't worry, it was actually way cooler than what we wanted to show you? What an easily avoidable and stupid idea in a horror movie that has a slasher theme. Whatever. So we meet our main character, Dina, getting over a bad breakup from someone named Sam, while her younger brother Josh is chatting up a stranger the old-fashioned way in an online chat with coded names. Yeah, it's probably a pedophile, but hey, maybe it's just a goth chick with a cool dark chat name. Who knows? So the school is holding a ceremony for the kids who died at the mall at the football game the upcoming weekend. Dina is in the marching band while her 2 best friends, Kate and Simon, are a cheerleader and a mascot. They are also the entire school's drug dealers. So they all ride with the football team. Wait, huh? Since when do football players, cheerleaders, and band travel on the same bus together? Anyways, they go to Sunnyside where the football game is. Dina sees a jock and a cheerleader make out, so she storms off. And as she rounds the corner, the cheerleader catches up to her and Dina calls her out by her name. Sam. I want to joke around, but I actually liked this little twist. It generally surprised me that it didn't seem forced. Normally, I don't like forced pandering or anything like that in my movies and shows, but I thought this was well executed. A fight breaks out amongst everyone on the field, so they all go home. While on the bus, Sam and her jock boyfriend Peter are chasing after them while chucking bottles at the bus. So Dina and Kate open the back and throw a bunch of Kool-Aid at them, but they get distracted and drop the whole cooler, and it shatters Peter's windshield and it makes them crash.
Fucking whoops.
So Sam stumbles out of the car and bleeds on the ground, and she gets some spooky visions and whatnot, but what happens next is incredible. While the police are questioning everyone, they all tell the same story and get away with it. That is damn near high fantasy level of fiction right there. You're seriously telling me that 2 groups of enemy high school kids all told the same lie to the police and nobody broke and they all got away with it? So everyone goes home, but someone in the same costume as the mall killer is messing around in and around Dina, Kate, and Simon's houses. So they bolt and team up to find Sam because they think her boyfriend Peter is doing it. Oh, and Josh comes too. They get to the hospital where Sam is at, and the killer finds them and does what killers do. So they bolt out of there with Sam in the stolen ambulance. I liked the hospital scene. Normally in horror movies with hospitals, there's only like 6 people in it, but our main characters are being chased around by a serial killer and past a room of zonked out people who just couldn't give a shit. So the group goes to the police station for help, but the cops are unhelpful and the group gets attacked by different kind of serial killers, and they bolt to Dina's house. While there, they get attacked again. Josh, who is a serial killer fanatic, basically figures out what's happening and why it's happening to them. Essentially, they are being chased by dead serial killers brought back by the curse of a local legend witch that died a few centuries ago. The killers want Sam because she saw some shit that she shouldn't have, so they go to the crash from earlier to pay respects to the witch, but that backfires.
Fucking whoops.
So they head to the school to set a trap for the killers, and at the school there are some romantic scenes that seem more wrong the more you think about them. Their plan goes well and they blow up the killers, but they reform, and it reminded me of one of my favorite scenes from Monster Squad. So they go to the grocery store / pharmacy, and holy shit, how many locations is this movie gonna have? Anyways, they have one last plan that doesn't go very smoothly, and some people die in a pretty awesome and shocking manner, I will add. But the plan works and all seems well, and they pull off another elaborate lie to the cops and get away scot-free. Amazing. So they go home, but get a call from someone who survived the previous killing spree and tells them it's not over. 1978 starts off with, oh hey, it's Britta.
Christmas time!
Oh, Britta's in this?
So Britta tells the story of how she survived the last serial killer when she was a kid at summer camp. She starts the story with, it all started the first day of camp, and a week later, my sister died. Spoilers? Anyways, young Britta, also known as Ziggy, is being chased around and beaten by some other kids at camp, and shit gets brutal pretty fast, all because she stole some money from the rich kids. The counselors intervene, but have the morality of a kindergarten teacher. Teacher, Sheila and her friends gave me a bloody nose, tied me up and burned me with a lighter. Well, Ziggy stole some of my money. Well, then you're all getting detention for the exact same amount of time. But it turns out that Ziggy is already on her 5th strike from vandalizing the camp. Is every main girl in this trilogy a total bitch?
I may not know my flowers, but I know a bitch when I see one.
So Ziggy goes to the nurse who went psycho because her daughter was the latest serial killer, the Razorblade singer. Meanwhile, we meet Ziggy's older sister Cindy and her boyfriend Tommy, and he gets attacked by the psycho nurse. She keeps yelling that she saw his name on the wall, but she fails to kill him and the police take her away. Cindy wants to find out why the nurse snapped, and even though her druggy friends don't care, they tag along for the ride. They find the cave where all the witch stuff happens, and they see Tommy's name on the wall along with the other serial killers from the past. Cindy accuses her druggy friend of putting Tommy's name there, to which the druggy friend responds with the best comeback in the whole trilogy. She says, what, do you think I etched your boyfriend's name in solid stone with my fucking fingernails? It's about time someone was like, you are dumb. So Tommy goes into serial killer mode and starts axing people. Cindy and the other druggie escape through the cave and it collapses behind them. Up top, all of the campers are getting ready for the most extreme game of capture the flag that's ever been played. There's like 30 kids on each team and they have entire cabins designated as their jails. Which means Tommy's gonna have some fun tonight. I wonder how many dead kids there will be. I don't remember if they mentioned it before in the first movie. But I'm going to guess 6, maybe 8 people die. So a few counselors, but mostly kids. The first kid death doesn't get shown, and I get it. But after the kid death in Halloween 2018, I feel like that was prep work for a movie like this, so I'm kind of bummed we didn't get to see it. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time it's happened on screen, but it is always a gut-wrenching moment of just dread. Back down below, Cindy and the druggie chick are fighting, and I can't. This druggie chick is either very annoying or a bad actress, or both. Either way, I don't care to call her by her character name because she sucks so much. She has one funny line that I mentioned before and has a nice heart-to-heart with Cindy in the cave, and that's it. Back up top, Tommy is just having the time of his life, but don't worry, Ziggy and the young sheriff Good are protected by plot armor, and I'll get into that later. The sisters and the druggie chick meet up and figure out that they have to put the witch together because her hand was separated from her body. And Ziggy just had to bleed on the hand, so now she has a target on her back. So the living head for the tree and we see the dead come out of the cave and chase after them, which is pretty cool. We essentially get to see the witch's powers upgrade. We get to see some new serial killers, which is awesome, but we also see some old ones, which kind of sucks. The sisters dig up the grave, but it's a fake. So Cindy tries to buy Ziggy some time and heroically charges at Tommy, and it goes as well as you'd expect. Normally I wouldn't reveal this big of a spoiler in my less spoilery part, but we already know this is how it was going to end thanks to the stupid writing in the beginning. And even though we knew Cindy was going to die and Ziggy was going to survive, it's a powerful moment of these two sisters coming together after a whole movie of them hating each other. It was the most emotional and gripping moment of the movie and one of the highlights of the whole trilogy. However,
Oh, man, there's always a catch.
They share a moment of togetherness while being stabbed and axed, and I'm not exaggerating this. Sidney gets an axe to the chest 8 to 9 times. What? Tommy has taken people's heads off, chunked up skulls, but apparently struggles to get a killing blow after striking a chest cavity 7 times and then gets it on the 8th or the 9th? Ugh, I'm getting Quiet Place 2 flashbacks. Both endings aren't necessarily bad, they just dragged on for way too long. Brutal or high-intensity moments that are endings need to be tight. We see 12 bodies in one of the final scenes, so I was off on the kill count. The movie ends with how 1666 will pick up, and I hope Dina doesn't take the place of the witch the whole movie, because I could really use more fresh faces in this trilogy. Fear Street 1666 starts off with where the last one left us, and unfortunately, what I wish wouldn't happen did.
Why do you disappoint me? Second by second, you waste my time.
So even though our 90s girl is in the place of the witch, we are seeing events during her time. So Dina didn't travel back in time and can now change the present, which is nice, but it doesn't explain why all of the actors are playing new roles in 1666, but also playing similar roles. And I'm just confusing myself. Let's move on. So we're in a little settlement, and Sarah Fear, or Dina, is going with some friends to the outcast in the town who isn't pegged as a witch, even though she's an obvious peg for a witch. But they are going to get some drug berries for a sick party, bruh.
Aside.
So they arrive at the witch's house, and she's not there, so they loot the place like a bunch of assholes. And Dina finds a special book.
Supplemus, Carl. Dolor, Igneo, Animus.
The witch comes back and scares them out of her place. I don't really understand why she isn't more upset or violent to a bunch of people who broke into her house and were going through her stuff. The Blair Witch wouldn't have put up with that. So they get the berries and everyone parties their asses off. While at the party, Dina and past Sam have yet another lesbian romance scene, and it goes way too far for the ages they portray. Again, what are the odds that the main character has a secret lesbian relationship with their best friend in the 90s and 300 years prior with someone who looks exactly the same?
Astronomical.
Just another reason why different actors would have been nice. So they get interrupted and head home and just had to have a goodnight kiss, and the town drunk sees it. The next morning, literally everything goes wrong. The town drunk ratted out our main couple to their parents, the town's crops spoil, their well gets poisoned, and Dina's family pig eats all of their newborn piglets. I've actually spent time on a farm. That kind of stuff does happen, and it's crazy. The town preacher becomes the first serial killer, and I'm glad we got to see him. He was one of the most interesting of the long list of killers. Dina's guy friend, who is the ancestor of Sheriff Good, which makes sense that he would play that role, takes out the preacher before he can do any more damage.
No good.
So now we have to wait for the obvious to happen. The adults meet in the chapel and pass blame here and there until Dina and Sam get mentioned. I get that there is a decent reason why they would be blamed for the town's ailments, but what I don't get is why no one blamed the most obvious of scapegoats. The witch in the woods. Plenty of people know about her, and there are already rumors of her being a witch. Also, Dina and Sam are outside the chapel, and they're hearing these accusations, so when they get thrown under the bus, it blows my mind that Dina didn't blame the witch. She saw her spell book, and they stole from her. I know women didn't have much of a voice back then, but I feel like that's a convincing enough story to save your neck. Literally. Dina and Sam get noticed and book it, but Sam trips and Dina leaves, but eventually doubles back and tells Sam that they didn't bring the curses to the settlement and she will go to the witch and make a deal with the devil to save Sam and herself. So Dina arrives at the witch's house but finds her dead and the book is gone. So she goes to her friend Good's house and he agrees to help her. I can't really go any further without revealing some serious spoilers, but I'll just say that Dina finishes her giant vision trip and gets the info she needs to help her and Sam out in the present. And there's another 45 minutes left in the movie, which gives our band of heroes plenty of time to lay down a trap in the mall where the trilogy started. They come up with some pretty fun and smart tricks to keep the serial killers busy while they deal with ending the curse forever. So that's the Fear Street Trilogy. What do we think of it? The first one was enjoyable and it had some great kills, but it had way too many locations, it had a bitch as the lead, and it didn't really feel like the 90s. The second is the best. Some things were brought up and kind of forgotten. It had some plot armor moments, but the relationship between the sisters had a great arc. It had some great kills and a great but long finale. The third had potential to be much better, but they underused one of the most interesting serial killers. It didn't really feel enough like a period piece, and reusing the actors worked against it. And the twist was an okay decision, but I think there were much better options available. Overall, they are okay as a trilogy, but any movie that is considered as okay is skippable in my book. Also, the credit scene makes me worry that if they do future Fear Streets, they will involve the same kind of witch stuff. They need to move on and have a new villain or monster, and preferably a new cast. These actors are not on the same level as American Horror Story to pull off an anthology with a majority of the cast always returning. Alright, so now I'm going to go into major spoilers, so you have been warned. So some of the highs in 94 are the intro in the mall, the razor blade killer was a nice idea, the locker room scene with the younger brother and the cheerleader was shocking and pretty funny, because I thought she was dating the mascot, and the kid just wins the lottery with having his high school crush, who is at least a year older than him, ask him to help her change. The death of the cheerleader and the mascot was done incredibly well, and the flawless lying to the cops is just insane to think about. And the younger brother helping out the graffiti guy escape police justice was hilarious. He had no idea why that guy was in the station, but just gives the guy a paperclip to pick the lock on his handcuffs. What if he was a serial killer? What if he was a thief? What if he was, anything, like any kind of serious criminal? He had no idea. Or at least, we didn't see that conversation happen as an audience member, but whatever. I'm also torn on the ending. I liked how it was a they survived story because they didn't actually do anything to stop the witch, and I think it would have been better if Sam killed everyone in the house, but that would mean we wouldn't have had any sequels, so I don't know. And speaking of that ending, I gotta talk about some lows. Dina gets stabbed by a drumstick, and it never gets brought up that she has a stab wound in her stomach in the whole trilogy. Also, the mascot friend gets his ankle sliced with a razor blade, and he never limps for the rest of the movie. When they set the trap for the killers in the school, they are using buckets of blood to lure them in. Where are they getting all this blood from? And it doesn't even look seriously watered down like it does in the third movie. When Sam shoves fistfuls of pills in her mouth with no water, that is another high fantasy level of fiction moment in this trilogy. And at the end, after drowning Sam, they still go for the EpiPens even though those were part of the drug overdose plan. And speaking of, they stick her with 6 EpiPens. Let's do a quick little search on how many is too many, and holy shit!
She's dead!
She is. These are the moments that make life worth living.
The final criticism I already brought up is the lack of a 90s feel, and I heard other people bring this up, and I have to agree with it, but overall, I still enjoyed the movie. Some of the highs of 78 are seeing the killers morph out of the cave heart, or whatever it is. Seeing new killers like the Doll Boy and the Milkman was awesome. It had some good deaths as well. And one of the druggy chick has a compound fracture and gives some big dumb speech so she can tag along and immediately get Sam Jacksoned was amazing.
We're going to pull together and we're going to find a way to get out of here. First, we're going to seal off this.
Also, the ending was great, even though I thought it could have been a little bit better. Some of the lows are when Tommy is in the cabin with Ziggy and Good, and he axes Good's leg, and he just leaves him to go after Ziggy. Even though Tom has killed both Counselor and Camper before, so it's just an obvious plot armor point. It also gets glossed over when the Counselor took the bus before Good gave him the signal to leave, which might have been the right call, but it doesn't get brought up how he ditched other people to die when he didn't know how many people he was leaving behind. and it would have been mostly kids. Speaking of, Sheila gets knocked out in the outhouse, and after Tommy attacks it, she just gets left behind and is never mentioned again. So, did she make it, or did she not? At the end, it seemed odd that Good was giving CPR to Ziggy instead of stopping the bleeding from her 6 stab wounds. And finally, it is odd that the main focus of the story is Ziggy's older sister, Cindy, even though Ziggy, or Britta, is telling the story.
You're punishing me for being alive!
That's the general idea, baby.
And Cindy never survived at the end, so how did Ziggy know what she was doing? They never had a chance to tell each other what happened. But despite all of this, it's still the best of the trilogy, and it's probably because of the relationship between Ziggy and Cindy. Also, Tommy is a good, relentless killer, and Ziggy and Good's relationship is cute. The highs of 66 and or 94 Part 2 are the twist that it's Good's ancestors are the real villains, even though I think there were better routes they could have taken. The blood on the killers to make them turn on each other was a fun idea. The book Body Armor was smart, but also kind of dumb. The Preacher and his killings were great. I just wish we saw more of him. Some of the lows obviously include the recasting, but the Witch's spellbook had gibberish body text, but the titles of the spells were in clear English. Why? Who wrote that? If they were trying to be more accurate with the time period, why did they have Sarah Fier do all the traditional man chores and show up her younger brother? Witch set the most recent standard when it comes to period pieces, especially since it's the same time period as the Fear Street movie. We never really see or understand the benefit of doing these curses, at least from Sheriff Good's side. Is there some sort of gold mine or oil well underneath Good's land or just on that side of town that just Satan pulls out of his ass? Is it just fertile land for crops? Also, a lot of the dialogue is in your face. It's like they can't help but spell shit out to you. Remember, brevity is the soul of wit. And I'm not joking, Dina makes an epic speech before the final showdown, and she says these words. Just because we are weird, it doesn't mean they can feed us to their meat grinder. Your friend was killed by a meat slicer yesterday.
Very poor choice of words.
It doesn't make sense that the Good family wouldn't have some kind of extra protection from the serial killers, especially if the devil cares enough to make zombie killers when someone bleeds on Sarah Fier's bones, which gives them a clue of how to stop the curse. It also doesn't make sense that killing Good stops the curse. He has brothers. His brother was the mayor, and the cave was either under the sheriff's house, the family house, or just under the mayor's house. Anyways, the whole family was in on it, and they could keep the curse going. Whatever, maybe I'm just being too nitpicky, but overall, the series is okay. The kind of horror you'll see is mostly violence. There are kid deaths, but technically it doesn't show it. Serial killers, mostly because the whole theme of this Fear Street trilogy is slasher. And thank you all for watching. Stay spooky.